Pinkerton's Ghosts is a horror anthology podcast by Superversive Radio, with no affiliation with any detective agency, person, real or imagined, or the dark forces of Outre-Terre. It is not intended for children.
This job isn't for everyone. Actually, it's not really for most people. Paranormal Pinkerton is a thankless profession with low pay and lower respect. You don't become a Pinkerton for the glory of it. So, why do we do it? For cases like this last case. I spend my time differently since, Special Forces. I'd like to say I was relaxing. In reality, I was scouting out places I could hide gear and weaponry. I'm not looking for a bunker yet. I got a message from Control. An informant tipped me off that there is a strange pattern with patients who receive help from the Aladdin Foundation. Figure out what's going on. While Piton Sandave is working the Jack Morrow bombing, he will be placed at your disposal if you need him. This was, perhaps, the vaguest message I'd ever received from Control, and it utterly baffled me. The Aladdin Foundation was one of those charitable groups that granted wishes for kids. What on earth could be the problem with them? I thought they just took kids to Disney World or something. I tried to get specifics from Control about whatever the hell strange patterns even meant, but she just brushed it off with, "You're the detective. Figure it out." Great. So, Control didn't know. I made a mental note to learn more about her informants one day, then started digging into the data on the Aladdin Foundation. They distinguished themselves from other similar organizations by focusing on more, unusual wishes. Less go to Disney World and more taste every flavor of ice cream ever invented type stuff. I dug more into this and noticed some of the wishes were a little odd. Find a mommy who loves them, taste the color blue, become a mermaid. Now, don't get me wrong, I know there are creative ways to do this stuff, but it struck me as strange. I dug deeper and started to look into the histories of the kids who signed up for a wish, and that's when alarm bells went off. Every single kid, everyone without exception, dies within 6 months of their wish. Now, I know this was for gravely ill kids, but every single one, of hundreds and hundreds of kids, not a single one got better. Something wasn't right. So I did some research and learned that the Aladdin Foundation was going to be having a fundraiser and photo op to the public at a hospital in Phillipsburg, New Jersey that Saturday. I decided to make a visit prepared with the usual materials: gun, hidden of course, crucifix, basic fire starters. The goal was to interview people, gather information, make a preliminary report, and settle in for a potentially lengthy investigation. Instead, what happened was not that. Not that at all. Let's skip the boring bits. I was brought over to the children's wing of the hospital after I told them I was a reporter, doing a story on the Aladdin Foundation, for a web magazine, something the nurse didn't bother checking. The event was open to the public after all. Just showed her my camera and she walked me over there. And that's when I saw her. She was dressed in an old-fashioned candy striper outfit. Her sleek blonde hair was tied up in a ponytail. She was in the middle of some sort of photo shoot. Even now, so many years, so many experiences on, I had to grudgingly admit she looked stunning. My ex-wife, Cynthia. Actually, now I thought about it, I didn't know what her last name was these days. Certainly not Cynthia Russo, now that she'd remarried. What on earth was she doing here? Cynthia was a flawed human being in many, many ways, but she didn't seem the type to involve herself with, Paranormal Pinkerton material. Or was she? I thought about my doppelganger. Didn't he say something about that universe's version of Cynthia getting involved with him? I brushed it aside. You can't think too long about that alternate universe stuff or it'll drive you crazy. We looked at each other and locked eyes for a moment. I tried to keep my gaze neutral, but I'm not sure how successful I was. Once the photo shoot was done, Cynthia made her excuses and sauntered over to me. I didn't know what to expect. A frown, a smile. I had barely seen her since the divorce. She just grabbed my wrist. "Let's take this private, huh, Shawnee? My goodness, what on earth happened to your eye?" That's Cynthia for you, taking charge of every situation. I managed to get out workplace injury, while she dragged me into an empty maintenance room surrounded by mops and buckets. She folded her arms. The two of us stared at each other for a moment while I tried to work out what I thought of her. "You gonna speak, or are you waiting for a striptease? We don't have that type of relationship anymore, Sean. You know I've remarried." I guess I had to say something. There was a lot on my mind, but I went for the most immediately important question. "Why are you here?" "That's what I was going to ask you. I'm just a volunteer with the Aladdin Foundation. You know, helping kids, granting wishes, that sort of thing." She gave me a smile. This time I folded my arms. "Can it, Cynthia? I know you. You aren't the type to do anything without something in it for you. What's your angle?" She pouted at me. "Now, Shawnee, don't be mean. I didn't even know you'd be here after all. If you must know, I take the, public side of the work for the Aladdin Foundation. Fundraising, events like this. It feels good to do good." Ah. She was doing it for the social clout. She continued. "But why are you here?" "I'm on a job, and keep it quiet. I don't want people to know." "On a job? With that private detective agency you insisted on joining?" "That's the one." Cynthia clapped her hands. "How exciting! What can I do to help?" I moved to walk out of the room. Stay out of my way, for one thing. Maybe Cynthia did have information to help, but being in the same room with her alone was starting to get my blood pressure up. Cynthia grabbed my arm. It was the first physical contact we'd had in years. "Now, stop with the cold shoulder. That's hardly fair. How are you? How's life been?" Well, if she insisted. I turned to face her. "How's life been? You're asking me how life's been? Well, let me tell you, Cynthia, I've seen things you could never even imagine. Monsters and magic. I've been targeted by some of the most dangerous men in the world. Been shot at so often I lost count, and as of last month had to burn down a restaurant to prevent an eldritch abomination from coming out into the open, taking over mankind. Except I'm not even sure if what I did worked. And you know what? I'd still take my life now, every day of the week and twice on Sundays to one more second of being married to you. So yeah, that's how life's been." Cynthia's jaw had dropped, but credit to her, she kept on target. "No other girls, then?" I rolled my eyes. "As it happens, there is another girl I happen to love." Cynthia thought about it. "I guess that really is life, then." I marveled at her single-minded focus to ignore everything else I'd admitted about my life and focus on the girl. I wouldn't utter another word about Violet to her if she had me tortured. I sighed. This was dumb. I really did need information. "Yeah, that's life. Look, there's something you may be able to help me with. I got a lead that something shady was going on with this organization, the Aladdin Foundation, but no details. Anything raise your eyebrows?" "Raise my eyebrows? The Aladdin Foundation? But why?" "All they do is help sick kids." I'm not so sure of that. Did you know every single child who's been involved with the Aladdin Foundation has died within 6 months? So? They're terminal, Sean. That's what terminal means. I shook my head. No, that rate is still way too high. Make-A-Wish isn't this bad. Some kids have even survived their troubles. She shrugged. I don't know what to tell you. Sick kids die, Sean. She clearly didn't know anything. Okay, fine. So, what are the details behind today's fundraiser anyway? Well, we have a new kid, Jimmy Sable Jr. He's had a tough life, even compared to some of the other kids here, raised by a single dad. Mom isn't talked about, has some rare form of cancer. So the fundraiser is for him? Yeah, he hasn't decided on a wish yet, but the organization likes to contribute to medical costs with stuff like this as well. I'm telling you, Sean, you're barking up the wrong tree here. I wasn't convinced. Maybe. Is Dad around at least? She nodded. I'll introduce you to him. We walked back into the hospital room that had all the cameras set up. Cynthia called out, Hey, Mr. Sable! Can you come here a moment? A middle-aged man who looked like he hadn't shaved in days or slept in weeks looked up from kneeling next to the kid's bed. What's up? I stepped forward. I have a couple questions for you. Nothing to worry about. It shouldn't be too long. He leaned down and hugged his son, but followed me out of the room. Sure? He looked at me curiously. What is this about? Sorry for troubling you, Mr. Sable. I'll be as straight as I can. You're not in any trouble, but I'm a private investigator. Who have you spoken to from the Aladdin Foundation so far? Mr. Sable looked concerned. The lady in the old-timey nurse outfit over there, but a higher-up was supposed to be coming in today. Why? Should I be concerned? Before I could answer, a burst of applause came from outside of the room. I looked towards the door, then back at Mr. Sable. He shrugged. They told me about this. I'll be right back. Cynthia whispered into my ear. A little too close. That's probably Thea Sawyer. She's the founder and CEO of the Aladdin Foundation. Actually, I should be going to meet her. We're doing a tour of the facility. I wanted to meet this woman too, actually. This is when the trip, already not one I found pleasant, took a turn for the weird. Because standing in front of the cameras and reporters was a Greek goddess. It was the ring of dispel that made this obvious, the gift of Elisha. The woman glowed. I mean, she literally had a golden glow around her. She wore a simple business suit, designer shoes, and rectangular glasses. It was a high-class businesswoman, but it wasn't flashy. It didn't impress on its own. But she dazzled. Everyone hung off her every word, but for some reason it didn't stick in my head. Maybe she was imbuing it with some measure of power, and the ring of dispel repelled it. How else could you tell she was a goddess? There was a presence, an air of regality, but also a feeling of power. It radiated off this woman. You felt small in front of her, insignificant. Nobody seemed to notice. I focused enough to get her words. We are all about helping families here at the Aladdin Foundation. These families, these kids, they're our number one priority. Right, Jimmy? She leaned down towards Jimmy, lying in his bed, and he gave her a hug as the whole room awed. Do you have a wish yet, Jimmy? A microphone was shoved into Jimmy's face. He had a weak, thin voice. I don't know. Everyone laughed. Thea's was the most infectious of everyone there. Of course, just make sure you tell us when you're ready. She turned towards the photographers and reporters again and opened her arms wide. I know people are suffering, but nobody needs to worry anymore. We'll make your families perfect again. I looked around to see if anybody noticed how weird that sounded, but they were all too busy applauding. But as Thea waved, she made eye contact with me, and I knew we'd have to meet. I walked directly over to her, and she waved the reporters aside. She gave me a smile I can only describe as, predatory. Sean Russo, how delightful. I think we should talk. So she knew my name. Not good. Never good. Paranormal Pinkertons thrive on being gray men. No one knows who we are, and we disappear when the job is done. Being known starts us on a back foot. Cynthia was standing nearby and she looked over in surprise. Wait, Sean, you know her? I looked Thea, that wasn't going to be her real name, in the eye. No. She smiled wider somehow. Oh, but I know you. You're quite famous, you know. I looked around. Should we? Thea laughed. I wouldn't worry about everyone else. They won't notice anything out of the ordinary in this little discussion. I see you have your famous ring on, Sean Russo. I clenched my fist. The ring of dispel cut into my palm. I never thought I'd be spotted in the street. But why not? You, Jack Morrow, and Jim Donavan. Why, you three are quite well known in our neck of the woods. We had just about written the Paranormal Pinkertons off. But you three are like mosquitoes. We swat and swat, but nothing can kill you. I heard about your little escapade with the Grand Mason Special Forces agents, and every now and then, we feel a little sting. It can be quite annoying. I wasn't sure where she was going with this, but the more information, the better. I'm gonna cut to the chase. I know you're a goddess, but I don't know which one. Who are you, really? She laughed. Cheeky, but very well. Behold! She stepped back and spread her arms. Light started flowing out of her, so bright I had to cover my eyes. Nobody else in the room seemed to notice. I am no mere goddess. I am Hera, queen of the gods. Hera. This was not good news. Not that dealing with a god is ever great news, but a minor god is a little more workable, sometimes even killable. But this was no ordinary god. This was one of the Olympians. More than that, this was Hera, one of the most powerful Olympians of all. Paranormal Pinkertons have files on the gods. The first thing to understand is that they aren't really gods, they're demons. They are immensely powerful creatures from hell who hate humanity and want to torture them. They're nothing in the face of the one true god, but I am not him, and the Olympians are still a hell of a lot more powerful than me. Hera is a goddess of the family. To understand how a demon thinks, assume that everything they claim about themselves is the opposite of what they really are. Maybe they'll do something to live up to their moniker, if it'll cause someone more pain that way. Suddenly, everything about this organization was making a horrifying sense. As the pieces clicked in my head, I felt the blood drain from my face. Wait a minute. You. That's right, Sean Russo. I'm the founder of the Aladdin Foundation. Oh, stop looking so upset. All I do is grant wishes. Any wishes. No matter what they are. And these poor families, why, they'll do anything to grant that wish to their poor, sick children. Anything. And that's exactly what they agreed to give me when they sign on the dotted line, in exchange for whatever I ask, with the promise that I never ask for more than they can give. I grant any wish, and then I take my payment, maybe in a day, maybe in a week, maybe in 6 months. The life of their child. My fist was clenched so hard I was drawing blood. I was so angry I could barely speak. You... Hera just laughed again. Come now, Sean Russo. These poor sick kids, why, they're dying anyway, right? And they're so imperfect. So broken. A mockery of a perfect family. I am just getting rid of the mockery. There it was. I resisted the urge to grab the demon's neck and strangle her in front of everyone. Even assuming no one would help her, tangling with a god never ends well. So why tell me all of this? Because you can't do a thing about it, Sean Russo. Your gun is a toy to me. Perhaps a living saint could force me to leave, but a man like you... When was the last time you fasted? I recall a demon saying something similar to Jim in an old case, and I felt my face go red. I'd always considered Jim more morally loose than me. What a joke I was. Well, I'm going to go back to schmoozing with everyone here. I can never resist an adoring crowd. You make your report to Control if it makes you feel better. In a few minutes, I'll have my little talk with Mr. Sable. I'm sure he'll agree to a deal. After all, poor little Jimmy over there is quite sick. The glow on her faded. I could still see it, but it wasn't as strong anymore. Hera turned her back on me and started chatting cheerfully with reporters again while I stood shaking in rage. I'd never felt so helpless in my life. This was one of the sickest, most evil things I'd come across in my time as a paranormal Pinkerton. A level of cruelty and sadism it was hard for me to even conceptualize. Next to me, Cynthia, who had been zoned out during the whole discussion, blinked a few times and looked at me. "Sean, why do you look so upset?" I didn't know what to tell her. "You need to quit this place and never come back." She looked at me in shock. "Seriously? Even after speaking with her you say that, but why?" "Cynthia, this place is evil. That thing over there is a demon." Cynthia laughed in my face. "Don't be ridiculous, Shawnee. Thea Sawyer is the heart and soul of this place." I didn't know what to do and felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned around in surprise. It was Mr. Sable. Excuse me, Detective? You had something you need to tell me, right?" "Mr. Sable," I thought over what Hera had said and felt a surge of hope. "Did you sign a contract with the organization yet?" He looked at me puzzled. "Yeah, I did. Why?" "What did the contract say?" "They said they'd grant any wish, and in exchange they wouldn't ask for anything we couldn't give them." Well, that matched up with what Hera had said. I felt a surge of hope. I grabbed Sable by the shoulders. I had to convince him. "Mr. Sable, you need to listen to me right now. Everything I'm going to say is going to sound unbelievable, but you have to trust me." He tried to move away, but I held him in place. "Buddy, I don't know who you are. You need to wish for them to leave and never go near children again. If you don't, they're going to kill your child." He was so amazed by what I said, his jaw dropped. "What?" His eyes were bloodshot. I could tell he hadn't slept, and God only knows how long. "Listen to me closely. I am a member of a detective organization known as the Paranormal Pinkertons. We deal with supernatural mysteries and problems on local scales that the larger players won't deal with. Look, I'm not... What you need to know is that the person running this organization is a powerful demon. In exchange for a wish, she's going to kill your child as payment. That's how demons get their kicks." The reporters started to go quiet again. Hera had seen me talking with Sable. He backed away from me like I was infected with something. Couldn't blame him. He waved his arm in front of him, warding me off and dismissing me. "No, that's... I took off my ring, grabbed his hand, and before he could protest, jammed it on his finger. "See for yourself." At once, Hera's glow completely disappeared, as did any sense that I was in the presence of something supernatural. "Thea, though, what a generous woman," was being whispered into my ear. "She's got it all, but she does so much for the kids." If I didn't know better, I'd swear it was my own mind talking to me. Sable, though, looked shocked. His jaw dropped in amazement. You're... Hera looked at me annoyed. "Clever plan, Russo. I didn't think of that." She looked at Sable and smiled. "Yes, I am a goddess. The goddess Hera. Before you make your wish, consider something very carefully. I will grant you any wish. The contract is honored to the letter. None of it was a lie." I felt my stomach drop. "No." But Sable had picked up on it. "Wait, you don't mean..." "Yes, a joke to the masses, but to me, a promise. Just say the word, and little Jimmy will be completely cured, cancer-free. A miracle." I turned to Sable. Jimmy Sable Jr. was his kid's name. He's the senior. "Mr. Sable. James." Listen to me. Demons are liars. You can't trust a word she says. The salesman in me said I had already lost him, but another part of me said that maybe there was hope. Hera gave a dazzling smile. Ah, but Russo, you're the one not telling the full truth. She looked at James. I signed a contract, James. Even a goddess like me is bound when they give their word. Isn't that right, Russo? Don't lie. My face started to color. That's Mr. Sable. Hera had wrapped her arm around him. Listen to reason. If I'm what he says I am, a creature of unfathomable power, then nothing you do would stop me for long. No mortal means can cure your son, your only family. But I can. I was helpless. Demons are liars, but they're twisty liars and good at it. It's almost impossible to out-argue a demon. Cancer-free, but in 6 months run over by a car. Sable was looking at her with a new light. Really any wish, but my son... The contract allows for parents to speak for their children. Anything your heart desires can be yours. It was all up to James now. I had nothing else to say. Please. James wasn't even looking at me. I have a wish. Hera smiled. I thought you would. I wish that you shut the Aladdin Foundation down, never go near sick kids ever again. I'd never seen a goddess surprised before. Her jaw dropped. You heard me. Get out of here and don't come back. Hera started to glow, and this time everyone could see her. She turned to me. Sean Russo, this is your doing. This isn't over. You've made an enemy of me. I will be back for you. You will pay for this. Get in line, demon. A blinding flash filled the room, so bright that even with my eyes covered I could see it. I opened my eyes. All traces of the Aladdin Foundation were gone. Instead, the Make-A-Wish Foundation was there. I blinked and walked over to Cynthia. Did you see... Cynthia looked at me confused. See what, Shawnee? I shook my head. I wondered how I still remembered everything without the ring. Maybe Hera wanted it that way. Never mind. James Sable walked over to me. He held out the ring of dispel and I took it. I remember it all. You could keep whatever this is. Blissful ignorance is fine by me, I think. I took the ring back and shook his hand. So, why did you do it? James looked thoughtful. Well, honestly, I'm not totally sure. I guess it was just, what sort of person has the power to cure all of these kids, and just doesn't? And then the reporters, the news articles, he gestured at Cynthia. Photo shoots, just really sick and messed up. I knew I couldn't trust her. I smiled. You got a lot of wisdom. I'll make sure we say prayers for your kid. James looked sadly over at little Jimmy lying in bed. I guess. Don't discount it. You just got a glimpse of the other side. The good guys are real too. The rest was wrap-up. Cynthia and I... Well, I'm glad Cynthia is Cynthia, I guess. I'll leave it at that. As for little Jimmy, last I heard he was still alive. I hope it stays that way. I'll be praying. Sean Russo, signing off. For now.
Pinkerton's Ghosts is a podcast distributed by Superversive Radio, licensed under an attribution non-commercial, share-alike international license. This episode was written by Anthony Marchetta and is performed by the same. Ben Wheeler edits, directs, produces, and herds cats. Kid Dickerson performs our audio editing. Visit us on Facebook, read articles on superversivesf.com, or listen to us on unauthorized Acast, iTunes, or Spotify. Contact us through Twitter at @PinkertonsGhosts, email us at pinkertonsghosts@gmail.com, or send us noble messenger possums with messages strapped to their backs. Don't worry, they know how to find us. Thank you for listening, and good luck.